Hi, this is Jen Rubin, editor-in-chief of The Contrarian. I'm delighted to welcome back Adam Kinzinger, the former congressman from Illinois. Welcome.
Hey, what's up? Good to be with you.
Lots of action in your home state. Yesterday, a federal judge barred the deployment of Illinois National Guard and Texas National Guard, and essentially says, you people are making it worse. Are you surprised that Trump is having so little luck in court these days that judges seem to have had it and frankly don't believe what his lawyers are telling them?
Yeah, no, I'm not too surprised because to me, this is clearly a violation of, is it the letter of the law, certainly the spirit of the law and the Constitution? I think the thing, again, people need to remember is when a National Guard group is federalized, okay? So that means without the consent of the governor in the state. So even if the Texas governor consents to his troops being sent to Illinois, if the Illinois governor doesn't, those are federal troops. And I think, they have very limited what they can do in terms of law enforcement when they're federalized. And I think the Constitution is really clear that that is basically only to be done in case of massive national emergency. And so the big question here, Jen, is does the president turn around and invoke the Insurrection Act, which would, in theory, give him the ability to do this, but he would have to do that on the basis of, there's an insurrection or a massive national emergency. What that does is it starts the clock on the courts again, right? So if he declares the Insurrection Act, he acts as if that's legal and valid. Then you have to go through the whole process again of taking something to court, trying to get it to the Supreme Court. I think what surprises me, and I guess it's just not how the Supreme Court operates, is I wouldn't have been surprised if the Supreme Court would have just kind of come out of nowhere and blocked this, right? But I guess you have to take a case to them. But I can't imagine anybody that truly believes in the Constitution looks at what Trump is doing and says that's completely okay and that's completely in line.
Exactly. And you're right. He may seek to go directly to the Supreme Court as he's done before. He may go to the Seventh Circuit, which is the circuit court. What is also interesting is I think he thought this was going to make him more popular. It was
Mm.
going to show people he was tough on crime or he's a big, guy. He's going to roll over these blue state folks. And all the polling we've shown is that people don't like this. Amazingly, Americans don't like when they put military people on the street over the objection of local authorities. Is this one of these cases, not unlike Jimmy Kimmel, frankly, or the tariffs, where Trump's win turns out to be a political disaster for him and his MAGA cronies?
Yeah, very well could be. Here's the interesting thing. Initially, excuse me, initially I was like, and I am still upset at how quickly kind of these things have happened in 10 months,
Yes,
right? And I remember saying, and I think I've said it with you, this was like my 3 years worst case scenario, not 10 months. But
correct.
it is possible that that all happened so quickly. For instance, you have the deployment of these troops in, and frankly, cities where there's not really a ton going on, let's be honest. And then on top of that, you're watching ICE, continue to now shoot people in Chicago, for God's sakes. And there's way more to that than ICE is letting on. Kidnapping American citizens. And I started to think of this specifically last night. I'm like, it feels like America, and maybe this is just my gut sense, and it may be totally wrong, but it feels like America's starting to get a little fed up with what they're seeing from ICE. And
Yeah.
so when you take that combined with the federal troops in American cities, it may be that they went way too fast and this is creating a backlash. And whereas if they would have done this over a period of 2 or 3 years, it's like the boiling frog. We may not have noticed it or, may not have cared. So I hope that's the case. But we're going to have to see. I just think that, besides the most hardcore MAGA, and I can't explain them,
Yeah.
Americans just feel very wrong about American troops in the street. It's just ingrained into who we are as a nation. And frankly, it's ingrained into almost most humans unless you live in a straight up dictatorship.
Right. And I think you just said it that it does feel like a dictatorship. Sometimes we think, well, no one cares, no one's paying attention. But when something is this vivid, whether it's Jimmy Kimmel, a comedian being knocked off the air because he criticized the president, or it's troops in the street being so obvious about it, I think Americans may have woken up a bit, and what they're seeing, they really don't like.
Yeah, and this is the other point is it's not like the administration is being humble about this. I mean, look,
Yeah.
here's the point about the crime, which is yes, anywhere you deploy troops, there's going to be a reduction in crime. Okay, I'll grant that. That's a fact, right? But we could also deploy a soldier, one soldier every 5 square feet of this country, and there would be no crime. I read the book 1984. I've seen how North Korea works. I know that there's no crime when there's soldiers everywhere and everybody's watching. The question is, do we want to really live in that kind of a society? And as as former Republicans, we used to believe that states had rights and states could make this determination. And if Illinois decided that they didn't need troops in Chicago, that's Illinois' free market decision. And if they do need them, I mean, quite honestly, then Governor Pritzker would ask for federal support in terms of finances, and he would deploy his National Guard. And that would be totally legal, like what's happening in
Yes.
Louisiana. The Louisiana governor wants the Louisiana Guard to help. Totally legal, not worth throwing a fit about. But when it's the president coming in and legitimately invading Illinois with Texas troops, that's
Exactly.
egregious.
Exactly. What was so fascinating is you now have not one, but two Republican governors who have summoned the spine to oppose this. The
Mhm.
senator from Oklahoma, excuse me, the governor from Oklahoma and the governor from Vermont. This is the first significant kind of crack in the facade that you have not just one, but two Republicans, including one from Oklahoma, which is not exactly a liberal haven. Do you feel like this may encourage other Republicans? What are you hearing from your friends in other states? Is this perhaps going to finally kick these people into gear, at least governors who have an independent base of support and profile?
Yeah, I think it's possible that you may see a few more come out. They're all cowards. Let's just be clear. And but
Yes.
it is encouraging. Vermont, you understand, it's a Northeast governor. He probably has the political ability to do that. Oklahoma, that's a little more courageous because that's a 80% red state.
Yep.
And so, but what you see in that is somebody that genuinely, I believe, feels gross and uncomfortable about it. And somebody that recognizes, and this is the message that I think Republicans are so dumb in terms of not thinking about, which is, I'm sorry, you're not going to be in charge of the government for the rest of your lives. Democrats are going to come in. And if they try to do what you guys have done, how in the world do you have the moral authority to say that that's wrong? Because you're going to turn around and say, oh, you can't deploy Illinois troops into Texas. Well, yeah, actually, you guys have made it clear that that can be done now. You guys fought for it. And so this idea that, it's a limitation of the human mind, which is like, I forget the bias, but it's like current circumstances bias,
Yes.
which
Going
is,
forever.
yeah, you never see anything changing. Well, they're suffering that in the wrong way, which is they think they're going to be in charge. And I'm going to tell you, there's going to be a day when Democrats win. And my hope is that Democrats can both go after people that need to be gone after, people that violated the Constitution, that were corrupt, etc., while also still maintaining, our democratic norms to an extent. But we do have to hold these people accountable, I think.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, there's an interesting contrast going on. Stephen Miller, who is not Mr. Warm and Fuzzy. We put up a video, frankly, comparing him to a little bitty chihuahua, barking
Yeah.
all the time. Um, he's more and more in the news and more out front. Is that a good idea for this White House? Or are Democrats and independents or former Republicans saying, yeah, make this guy the poster boy for the administration?
He's such a dork. I mean, like, and I look, nothing against dorks. I was a dork when I was young, but he's like maintained that, right? And then he's taken the fact that he's a dork and tried to turn that into like fiery speech. And look, I think He's a terrible front man for this. Now, maybe the Republicans love him, but I think the rest of America's like, this guy looks like, I can make comparisons. I won't because I don't want to make news on that, but he looks like somebody that we can think of in history. But it's like, I wonder, it makes me wonder if they're putting him out front because they're like, this is your baby. And ultimately, if it backfires, he takes the hit for it. That's what I don't know.
Yeah.
Will the president defend him and what he's doing till the end, or the president, if he sees the polls turn and America turn, he's like, "Hey, this was Stephen Miller's thing. See you later." Either
Right.
way, I can guarantee you that in 10 years, there's not going to be anybody that's going to want to be seen at dinner with Stephen Miller.
Exactly. This is like Elon Musk. You're in and then you're not in.
That's
Suddenly
right.
I don't know who hired this guy. Wasn't he the guy who delivered coffee?
That's
There's
right.
no one he won't kick under the bus. Flip side, we've now seen a few Democrats, in particular, Governor Newsom and now Governor Pritzker, who have really stood up to the president in court, rhetorically. Um, how would you evaluate their performance? And do you hope that other Democrats will kind of model themselves on, the way to deal with a bully is punch him in the nose?
I think they're doing well. I mean, look, I think on the one hand, particularly if you want to run for president, you have to fight the president pretty aggressively, and I'll get into that. But I think you also have to paint a vision, and it's got to be a vision
Yes.
that's not a far left vision, a centrist vision for America. I'm sorry, America's a little more conservative than kind of the left of the Democrats. It's more liberal than the right of the Republicans. So find that thing and paint a vision for America, a future focus, because that's what I think America is starving for, something for like any kind of inspiration. But in terms of the actual how they're taking on Trump, it's perfect. The thing about Trump is, and particularly when on in Newsom's case, and I have real issues with Newsom, particularly platforming, Steve Bannon, et cetera. But on his specific, the way he's tweeting and talking, the thing about Donald Trump is everything about him is built on this superficial image, right? This is why I make the point all the time that he smells bad, because it's the dumbest thing to hit him on, but it bothers him more than almost anything, and it bothers his supporters more than anything because his whole persona is based on this shallow thing. And so
Yeah.
when Newsom mocks his tone, or Newsom like basically shows how much of a whiner he is, or South Park comes out and says, I'm going to sue you, I'm going to sue you, I'm going to sue you, it belittles him, and that bothers him. So I think that's the way you have to fight it, while at the same time holding, that you have to inspire people. You have to give them a vision. Hey, this guy's an idiot. Let's mock him. Here's where we should go as a country. And I think that's going to be the sweet sauce for, between now and 2029.
Absolutely. Last question for you. The shutdown. I think Republicans thought Democrats would cave. And, that wasn't necessarily a crazy assumption given their past behavior. But Democrats seem to have gotten their act together. They're ramming home it day after day after day that this is about healthcare. You guys are going to get walloped. How do you evaluate what's going on? And you think Republicans are eventually going to have to figure out a way to climb down from this?
Yeah, they're going to have to, as long as the Democrats hold out. Here's the deal, like, and I made this point for months leading up to this. Like, the Democrats will not get the blame. They can't. They don't control government, right?
Yeah.
Now, I think they did a very terrible job, Jen, in the lead up to this, because all Jeffries and Schumer should have been doing is saying, hey, we have no control of government. If you need us, we're here. It's going to cost, obviously, but like, we don't have any brain. It's all you. You got to figure it out. And, but they've been able to turn that since this has happened. And, the polling looks like people are blaming Republicans. The weird thing, though, is this is like the lowest drama shutdown. It's almost like every time the government has shut down in the past, everybody's hair's on fire until it's fixed. It's like this shutdown, people are just like, yeah, that's how dysfunctional we are, whatever. And they go on with their life. Now, the pinch points will get stronger when people miss paychecks, when, flights
Right.
get delayed. But as of now, it feels like, I usually every day forget that the government's closed down. And so
Right.
I think the Democrats need to hold strong. They can say, like, look, we hate this damage that's being done in the government. They've also so far called out Trump's bluff about firing a bunch of people, right?
Yes.
He hasn't
Yeah.
done that. And so I think that's going to be important. And by the way, before we go, one point I want to make about
Sure.
Chicago is like, ICE shoots a lady 5 times and says she tried to ram them in their truck and she was armed. Now, what do we find out later? I don't know what the ramming situation is. I will say this, by the way, if people jump out at me with masks, don't identify themselves, and try to pull me out of my car, it could get pretty messy, right? Particularly somebody
Yes.
that has threats against them. But secondly, they also said, look, this lady was armed to make it sound like she tried to pull a gun on them. She was armed. She was armed and legally armed with a concealed carry permit, as you can get in Illinois. So the Second Amendment champion and advocate should be celebrating that this lady was legally concealed carrying. And instead, they try to use
Yes.
that initially as an attack against her for why she was shot. That's insane.
Yeah, well, that is the ultimate contradiction. Gosh, who made that law that allowed people to have weapons with them? People might mistake that they're being aggressive. Um,
Correct.
so crazy world. I know how much you must miss being in Congress these days, by the way.
Oh gosh, not a day,
Jeez.
not a single day do I.
I absolutely believe you. Listen, Adam, thanks for joining us. Thanks for everything you do. And
You bet.
you have new shirts out. You've got a new clothing line. What's all
Yeah,
that
yeah.
about?
Go to wearthemoutproducts.com. So a buddy of mine and I were coming up with these cool like designs, and it's not like,
Yes.
Adam Kinzinger stuff. It's like cool democracy stuff. So we did like wear them out, WEAR, wearthemoutproducts.com. Check it out because I'm actually really proud of this stuff. It's a soft launch. So we're going to be putting out more products related to it. Like women are saying they need the V-neck tees. We don't have those. Those will come out soon, but take a look.
They're great. I saw a bright blue one with a yellow eagle on it. It was very, very sharp.
Yeah, yeah, that's a
So
democracy hawk.
absolutely. Good luck with that, Adam. Have a
You
great
bet.
weekend. We'll see you soon.
You bet. Take care. See ya.